Here we have a cream leather recliner lounge. This is the main lounge that we want to match the colour with. If we look carefully, we found a swatch of leather stapled underneath. We send the swatch to have it custom colour matched. We will be using a product by Leatherique. The lounge is disassembled as much as possible. We begin by coating the lounge with leather conditioner. After 48 hours, the conditioning makes the leather feel tacky. Dried and cracked leather can be rejuvenated as well. We then use Pristine Clean to remove dirt from the leather. It's applied and scrubbed into the leather. Here you can see I'm using a toothbrush to scrub the leather. I later swapped over to using a nail brush. I found that the nail brush didn't fit in my mouth though. Here I can wipe off the dirt and we use clean rags. We swap the rags frequently. We reapply Pristine Clean and then scrub it again. Keep scrubbing and cleaning until no more dirt is seen. Once clean, we use a prepping agent to prepare the leather for dyeing. Apply the prepping agent. The bottle's not very good, so you better to pour it on. We use a Scotch Brite scourer, and we bought that from a car accessories place. Or we use 600 grit sandpaper instead. It's important that the dye is not applied too thickly. So you can see it's pretty thin here. So we apply more coats after it dries. I found that the seams and stitched areas were better to be coated with a small brush. Here, we've swapped over to using the small brush to apply the dye. Again, remember to apply the dye in thin coats. The dye is supposed to be dry enough to use after 48 hours, but I doubt that's true because it seems to stick to itself. If the dye touches plastic or more dye too early, it comes off. Try to avoid runs. Don't have too much prune juice. Here you can see me filling in the creases. Use a small brush as a large one will cause more potential runs. Find any streaky areas and fill them in. Here we're using a small lint-free material to apply the dye. Make sure you make an even coating here. Once again, the dye must be thinned out. Here we show some runs. This is the wet sanding technique not to use. Wet sanding can pull off large amounts of the dye. Here we can see wet sanding has literally taken off the last layer of the dye. Continued wet sanding makes it worse. This is the dry sanding technique, so we let it dry, use a 2000 grit sandpaper. It's much neater and less destructive. This is the lint-free cloth technique. Here I'm using hair tiebacks as the cloth. I got them for free, so they're lint-free, free. Try to get the folding parts out to remove some of the lounge recliner mechanism. The hair dryer is used until the dye is touch dry. Once dry, we later found that it wasn't good to let them touch anyway, so we found that you had to put the lint-free cloth into the areas. We packed it in there. The leather must not touch itself for about 5 days. If newly dyed areas touch themselves, the dye will stick and come off. Here you can see where that was touching the window frame and it's ripped off some dye. That's how you feel ripped off. Here the leather was touching itself and pulled off. When finally dry, reassemble the armrest. As they say, the rest is history. Use your feet to press the cushions open, and then the dye inside those cushions you can dry it. Once it's touch dry, just quickly shove some more material in there. Keep the gap open. Get the material and then shove it in there. The aim is not to have any dyed areas touching. Here's the finished lounge. Here is the lounge that we matched it to. Colour match is quite close, especially if it's in the dark and you can't see anything. Extra dye can be used to touch up the new lounge and the original lounge. Thanks for watching. Try not to touch yourself too much.